If you asked me yesterday, I would have said that the bull and bear metaphor for the stock exchange was an American creation. And it might be. But as you can see, it's also been used here in Vietnam. This is the Vietnam, or the Ho Chi Minh City Stock Exchange. I imagine it's the stock exchange for the entire country. And they have this statue of a bull and a bear right up front, just like they do on Wall Street. Before I left my hotel this morning, I was reading through some of the comments I got on one of my latest Indian videos. And one of the questions that a viewer asked was, how many incorrect statements can you make in one video? And I thought for a minute, and I realized that the only possible answer could be, I don't know for sure yet. People, I think, are starting to catch on to my ability to simply make things up if I don't know the answer to something. So if you're looking for some kind of specific fact, or if your life depends on something that I might say, always look things up. I can add that if you think my information from India was incorrect, you ain't seen nothing yet as far as misinformation is concerned. Just stand by. Oh, this is a real daredevil. Here I am crossing the street in Ho Chi Minh City while still making a video. This is YouTube history. I think I mentioned in another video that I'm staying in District 1 here, which is, from everything I read online, is probably the most popular tourist area. And if you just step outside my hotel and just wander around, you'll see that there are malls and tourist spots and famous old buildings, things like that that most tourists go to see. But just walk a few blocks in any direction and you're also in what I would guess is probably older Ho Chi Minh City. But the good thing about it is that all these places have sidewalks. So if you want to just wander, as long as you've got a map or a phone with a navigation app on it, you're perfectly set just to wander around the city, explore what you want to. And then when the time comes, you can just use your phone, find your way back to where you're staying. That's what I've been doing the last few days. I just pick a direction and just head off and walk. And I've stumbled upon most of the tourist spots that way. I found that the famous cathedral is covered with scaffolding. I don't even know if it's open, but I do know that the whole building seems to be under refurbishment or remodeling. I discovered the post office, which I thought at first was a train station because of the way it was shaped and the big clock that it was out front. And I discovered one of the central malls called Saigon Central, which is a big tourist attraction also. And the Ben Thai or Ben Tan market, that's right next to my hotel. So everything I read about tourism at District 1 so far has been correct. I find myself enjoying this city more and more. The longer I'm here, the more I like it. When I first got here, I think I mentioned in an earlier video how intimidating it seemed to cross the street or get through traffic. But I found out the second day, just by following other people across the street, that it's remarkably easy. As long as you do it without recklessly throwing yourself in front of a bus, you're going to be fine. At first, it seemed like this would not be a pleasant place to walk around in, and I find that it's completely the opposite. Assuming that you like high temperatures and really high humidity, you're set. Two things that I did realize are vastly different in Vietnam that I'm not used to from other Southeast Asian countries is it uses pretty much one language. If you don't speak Vietnamese, you're going to have trouble communicating and reading any of the signs. There's very few signs that have any kind of English translation, which is unusual because in Malaysia it seems like, at least in signage, you have signs that are both in Malay and English most of the time. Even in Thailand, a lot of the signage is in Thai and English. So it's sort of a crutch that you don't really appreciate is there until it's not there. It's not here. The other thing is the currency. Vietnamese currency is called a dong. And $1 US right now is worth about 25,200 dong. So as the driver who picked me up at the airport said, as soon as you change US dollars at a bank here in Ho Chi Minh City, you're an instant millionaire. And he's right. But the downside of that, of course, is getting used to all those zeros. It can be disconcerting when you go to pay for something and the cost is 150,000 dong. You're not really sure whether that's the right cost or not, and it's not always easy to make the conversion in your head. So it is something you have to prepare yourself for having currency with lots of zeros at the end. If you don't have a map, either electronic or paper, and you don't really know anything about the city, I'm guessing that it would be really easy to get lost. Because all morning long on this walk, I've been walking around in what I thought were squares or rectangles, so I would eventually come back to where I started. That hasn't happened so far. And technically, I have no idea at all where I am. But I'm waiting for some famous tourist spot to pop up to help orient myself somewhere on the map. I could use Google Maps, but I don't have to go anywhere. I have no schedule to keep. I figure why not just keep wandering. I ran into another Grab driver earlier this morning, and instead of trying to sell me a ride on his bike, he was asking me who was going to win the election. This is Wednesday, November 6th, I think. So it's the morning after the election in the United States. Actually, as I'm filming this, it's the night of the election in the United States. So everybody is waiting for the actual results of the election to happen. But that's what the Grab driver wanted to know. He wasn't interested in selling me something. He wanted to know who had won. I mean, maybe he thought I'd get a telegram or something, or somehow I'd have inside information that he wouldn't have. But I told him I'd have to wait just like he does to find out. Speaking of Grab drivers, for those of you that don't know, Grab is usually the Asian equivalent of Uber. So if you're used to calling a ride using the Uber app, in Asia you will use an app called Grab. Sometimes they're referred to as Grab taxis. But here in Vietnam, the Grab drivers that I've run into are motorbike drivers. So you have a choice. If you call a Grab, you can get a car, a van, or in Southeast Asia, a lot of countries, you can get a motorbike. Now, I've never ridden a motorbike or a motorcycle, and I've certainly never ridden on the back of a motorbike or a motorcycle. And that, frankly, is the last place I would ever feel comfortable riding. I might learn how to ride a motorcycle at some point, but I'm never going to ride on the back of a motorcycle, and that's that. Right now I'm walking around the perimeter of the Independence Palace. I'm not going in there today. It might be the subject of a video coming up, but not this one. But I do have an interesting story to tell. A few days ago, on my second wander around the city, I ran into two friends from Kuala Lumpur. One was Daryl from Wander Eats. I'm sure you've heard me talk about him before. He has his own channel called Wander Eats, and I'll put a link to that in the description down below. He was here. He does a lot of traveling in this area for his business. And I also ran into my friend Jamie, who I met in Kuala Lumpur in a Starbucks. He apparently was a student at the U.S. Sports Academy at the same time that I was teaching there. I was going into a Starbucks to sit down with my coffee, and he was sitting nearby, and we got to talking, and he explained who he was and how he knew me. That was complete chance, and that was a few years ago. A few days ago, I'm on my first wander through the city here in Vietnam, and as I'm crossing the street, I hear some guy come up near me and say, "Namaste." Now, I thought he was just another person like a Grab driver trying to sell me another ride. Turns out it's Jamie. Again, by pure chance, we ran into each other here in Ho Chi Minh City. Now, the thing is, he had already texted with Daryl, and they were meeting for coffee, so I just tagged along. And suddenly we're three people, two of which I had no idea were in Ho Chi Minh City, sitting in a Starbucks at Saigon Central Mall having a coffee. But I've now run into Jamie in two separate places quite by accident. And I'm sort of wondering when that next place or when the next event will be. I think that's going to do it for today's video. I'm going to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I'm Bill Price, and I approve this message.